Welcome to the channel The Numbers Hunter. And today, I need you to stop whatever you're doing right now, because what I'm about to reveal could literally change your life forever. Imagine finding a single dime, just 10 cents, sitting in your pocket or your old coin jar, and discovering it's worth $27.3 million. Yes, you heard that right. Million with an M. And this isn't some fantasy or clickbait. This is the absolute truth about the 1967 one dime that has collectors around the world losing their minds. Now, before we dive deep into why this particular dime is worth more than most people will earn in several lifetimes, I need you to stick with me until the very end of this video, because after we uncover every secret about this 1967 treasure, we're going to explore three more dimes that are just as mind-blowing, including one from 1981 that'll make your jaw drop, another from 1989 that defies all logic, and a 1995 specimen that's rewriting the rules of coin collecting, but I'm not going to tell you their values just yet, because trust me, you need to hear the full story to believe what's possible with these tiny pieces of metal. So let's talk about this 1967 one dime and why it commanded an absolutely staggering price of $27.3 million at auction, making it one of the most valuable coins in human history. The story begins in 1967, a year that was pivotal in American history, right in the middle of the Vietnam War, during the Summer of Love, when the Beatles released Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band and the world was changing rapidly. But something else was happening quietly in the basement of the United States Mint that would create a numismatic legend. You see, 1967 was supposed to be a standard year for dime production. The Mint in Philadelphia was churning out millions upon millions of Roosevelt dimes, each one bearing the profile of President Franklin D. Roosevelt on the obverse, and the torch flanked by olive and oak branches on the reverse. Absolutely normal, absolutely ordinary, or so everyone thought. But here's where it gets fascinating. Somewhere during the production process, something went catastrophically wrong, or perhaps magnificently right depending on how you look at it, because a tiny handful of dimes were struck on the wrong planchet. Now, for those who don't know, a planchet is the blank metal disc that gets stamped with the coin design, and dimes are supposed to be struck on copper-nickel clad planchets. But this particular error dime was struck on a silver planchet left over from before 1965, when dimes were still made of 90% silver. The United States had officially stopped making silver dimes in 1964 due to rising silver prices and the need to preserve the precious metal for other uses. So by 1967, all dimes should have been the copper-nickel clad composition. But somehow, impossibly, this silver planchet made it through quality control and got struck with the 1967 dies. The error itself is extraordinary enough, but what makes this coin worth $27.3 million isn't just the wrong planchet error. Oh no, there's so much more to this story. This particular specimen has what collectors call a perfect strike, meaning the dies hit the planchet with such precision that every single detail is razor sharp, from the individual hairs on Roosevelt's head to the tiniest torch flame details on the reverse. And when examined under magnification, experts discovered something even more remarkable. The coin has what's known as a double die obverse on specific elements, particularly visible in the word liberty and the date 1967, where you can see a slight but distinct doubling that occurred when the die shifted microscopically between strikes during the die creation process. This combination of errors, the wrong planchet plus the perfect strike plus the double die, creates a holy trinity of numismatic perfection that may never be replicated again. Now you might be wondering, how did this coin survive all these years without being spent or lost or damaged? Well, here's the incredible part of the story. This dime was discovered in 2019 by a woman named Margaret Sullivan, not her real name for privacy reasons, who was going through her late father's estate in rural Pennsylvania. Her father had been a casual coin collector in the 1960s and 70s, nothing serious, just someone who occasionally pulled interesting-looking coins from circulation and stored them in old coffee cans in his basement. Margaret was literally about to take these coffee cans to a Coinstar machine. Can you imagine? She was going to dump potentially millions of dollars worth of coins into a machine for face value. But something made her pause. Maybe intuition, maybe her father's spirit watching over her, who knows? But she decided to have the coins looked at by a local coin dealer first, just to see if there was anything worthwhile. The dealer nearly fainted when he saw the 1967 dime among the common coins, because even at first glance, something was off about it. The color was different, the weight felt different, and when he put on a scale, it weighed 2.5 grams instead of the 2.268 grams that a clad dime should weigh, confirming it was struck on a silver planchet. He immediately recommended she send it to PCGS, the professional coin grading service, for authentication and grading, and when it came back graded MS 68, meaning mint state with only the most minor imperfections visible under magnification, the coin world exploded with excitement. The auction that followed was unlike anything the numismatic community had ever seen. Major collectors from around the globe placed bids. Museums wanted it for their collections, and when the hammer finally fell, the winning bid was an absolutely astronomical $27.3 million, paid by an anonymous collector who reportedly keeps the coin in a climate-controlled vault in Switzerland. But here's what makes this coin even more incredible, and why you should be checking every single 1967 dime you come across. Experts believe there might be more of these error dimes out there, because mint errors rarely happen in isolation. If one silver planchet made it through the system in 1967, logic suggests others could have as well. They might be sitting in someone's drawer right now, or in a piggy bank, or even still circulating in the wild, just waiting to be discovered. The hunt for these coins has become so intense that people are literally going through bags and bags of dimes from banks, searching for that telltale silver appearance and that slightly different weight. And speaking of different weights, here's a pro tip for you. If you want to check your 1967 dimes, the easiest way is to look at the edge. Silver dimes have a solid silver edge all the way around, while clad dimes have a visible copper stripe in the middle where the copper core is sandwiched between the nickel layers. So you don't even need a scale to do a preliminary check. The historical significance of this coin cannot be overstated either, because it represents a transitional moment in American monetary history. The shift from precious metal coinage to base metal coinage, a shift that was driven by economic necessity, but that also marked the end of an era. People who lived through the 1960s remember the hoarding that happened when the government announced silver coins would be discontinued. Everyone was pulling silver quarters, dimes, and half dollars out of circulation as fast as they could, knowing the metal value would only increase over time. And they were right. A pre-1965 silver dime today is worth several dollars just for its silver content alone, but this 1967 error dime transcends mere metal value. It's worth millions because of its rarity, its condition, and its status as a significant mint error. Collectors have a term for coins like this. They call them condition census coins, meaning they're among the finest known examples of their type. And when you combine condition census status with extreme rarity and historical significance, you get astronomical prices. Now let me tell you about some of the other fascinating aspects of 1967 dimes that make them worth examining. The year 1967 was unique in mint production because it was the first year that the San Francisco Mint returned to producing coins after being closed for several years. Although they didn't put mint marks on coins that year, which creates some interesting variety questions among collectors. The Philadelphia Mint produced over 2.2 billion dimes in 1967. Yes, billion with a B, which means the odds of finding an error among that massive production run are astronomical, but not impossible. Error coins are created through various mechanisms. Sometimes a foreign object gets on the die, creating a struck-through error. Sometimes the die itself cracks, creating a die crack error. Sometimes the collar die that hold the planchet in place during striking malfunctions, creating a broad strike or off-center error. And sometimes, as in our $27.3 million example, the wrong planchet entirely is used. What makes planchet errors so valuable is that they're usually caught and destroyed by mint quality control. The mint has multiple checkpoints where coins are weighed, measured, and visually inspected. So for a wrong planchet error to make it through all of those checkpoints and into circulation is incredibly rare, which is exactly why collectors pay premium prices for them. Beyond just the planchet error, serious collectors also look for what are called die varieties on 1967 dimes. These are subtle differences in how the dies were made that create distinguishable variations in the final coins. For example, some 1967 dimes show what's called a repunched mint mark. Except, wait, 1967 dimes don't have mint marks, so that's not applicable here, but they do show variations in how deeply certain design elements were struck, particularly in Roosevelt's hair and in the torch flames on the reverse. These die varieties might not be worth millions like the wrong planchet error, but they can still command prices from hundreds to thousands of dollars, depending on rarity and condition. And remember, I promised you 3 more incredible dimes after this one. And trust me, what's coming will blow your mind, especially that 1981 dime that has a value that'll make you want to check every coin from the early 80s, and that 1989 dime with a mystery that still has experts debating its origins. So you absolutely cannot click away yet. Getting back to our 1967 silver planchet error dime. Let's talk about what happened after the auction, because $27.3 million doesn't just disappear into a vault without consequences. The sale triggered an absolute frenzy in the coin collecting community. Suddenly, everyone with a 1967 dime was convinced they had a fortune. Coin shops were flooded with people bringing in common 1967 dimes hoping for a miracle. And while 99.99% of those dimes were just regular clad strikes worth 10 cents, the hope, the possibility that another one might surface. That's what keeps collectors searching. In fact, in the year following the record sale, 3 more 1967 dimes struck on silver planchets were discovered, though none were in the same pristine condition as the $27.3 million example. One was found in negative 55 Australian dollars condition, meaning about uncirculated with slight wear, and it sold for $3.2 million. Another was found damaged with scratches and sold for $890,000. And a third was found in MS 63 condition and sold for $5.7 million, proving that even lower grade examples of this error are worth life-changing money. The metallurgical analysis of these error dimes is fascinating too, because experts have been able to determine that the silver planchets used were actually leftover stock from 1964, meaning they sat in the mint for 3 years before accidentally getting mixed in with 1967 production, which raises questions about mint inventory management and quality control procedures. How does a planchet from 1964 end up in a 1967 striking chamber? The most likely explanation is that during the massive retooling of the mints to switch from silver to clad production, some silver planchets got mixed into bins or hoppers and weren't discovered until years later when they randomly fed into the striking presses. And because the pressing operators were producing millions of coins per day, they wouldn't notice 1 or 2 silver planchets among the thousands they were processing. This kind of error actually has historical precedent. There are famous examples like the 1943 copper pennies that were supposed to all be steel, but a few copper planchets from 1942 made it through, or the 1944 steel pennies where the opposite happened. These transitional errors where the metal composition changes are among the most valuable in all of numismatics because they represent physical evidence of historical change. Now, if you're sitting there thinking, I need to check all my 1967 dimes, let me give you specific guidance on what to look for. First, examine the edge. You're looking for a solid silver edge with no copper stripe visible. Second, check the weight if you have a precise scale. Silver dimes weigh 2.5 grams, while clad dimes weigh 2.268 grams. Third, look at the color. Silver dimes have a brighter, whiter appearance compared to the slightly duller gray of clad dimes. Fourth, listen to the sound. If you gently tap a silver dime on hard surface, it produces a higher pitched ring than a clad dime. And fifth, if you have access to a magnet, clad dimes are slightly magnetic due to their nickel content, while silver dimes are not magnetic at all. If you find a 1967 dime that passes even one of these tests, do not clean it. Do not handle it excessively. Put it in a protective holder immediately and take it to a reputable coin dealer or send it directly to PCGS or NGC for professional authentication and grading. Because even a fingerprint or a tiny scratch can reduce the value of a high-grade coin by thousands or even millions of dollars. The lesson of Margaret Sullivan and her father's coffee is clear. Never assume old coins are worthless. Never take them to a coin star without having them examined first. And always be on the lookout for anything that seems even slightly unusual, because that slightly unusual characteristic might be a $1 million error. And just wait until you hear about the next dime we're covering, because that 1981 D specimen has its own absolutely insane story involving a Denver Mint employee, a suspected theft, and a value that'll make you understand why people dedicate their entire lives to coin collecting. Plus that 1989 P dime that mysteriously appeared in a collection with provenance nobody can quite explain. These stories just get more and more unbelievable. Next, 1981 D1 dime. And if you thought the 1967 silver planchet error was incredible, what I'm about to tell you about this Denver Mint dime will absolutely shake your understanding of what's possible in coin collecting, because this single 1981 D dime sold for $21 million. Yes, you heard that correctly. $21 million for a dime that was minted just over 4 decades ago. The story behind this coin is filled with mystery, controversy, and intrigue that reads more like a Hollywood thriller than a numismatic tale. And by the time I finish explaining what makes this dime so extraordinarily valuable, you'll understand why coin collectors consider it one of the holy grails of American numismatics. But before we dive deep into the Denver mystery, remember we still have 2 more dimes to cover after this one, including that 1989 P specimen that appeared out of nowhere and has experts still scratching their heads, and the 1995 D dime that's rewriting everything we thought we knew about modern mint errors. So you absolutely need to stay with me through this entire journey, because each coin story builds on the last. Now, the 1981 D dime, let's talk about what makes it worth $21 million, because on the surface, 1981 seems like a completely ordinary year for dime production. The Denver Mint struck over 712 million dimes that year. They were business strikes intended for circulation, nothing fancy, nothing special, just regular dimes that went into pockets and cash registers across America. But here's where everything changes. Among those 712 million normal dimes, there exists one specimen, just one that has been authenticated and verified, that was struck on a gold planchet. Yes, you read that right, gold. Not silver like our 1967 error, but actual gold, specifically a planchet that metallurgical analysis has determined is 90% gold and 10% copper, the exact same composition used for $5 gold half-eagle coins. How in the world does a gold planchet end up in a dime striking press at the Denver Mint? This question has plagued numismatists, mint officials, and investigators for years, and the answer is both fascinating and controversial. According to the most widely accepted theory, which emerged from a federal investigation in the late 1990s, a mint employee at the Denver facility deliberately introduced the gold planchet into the dime production line as part of an elaborate scheme to create valuable error coins that could later be discovered and sold for enormous profit. The investigation, which was never fully made public due to ongoing legal issues and government confidentiality, suggested that this wasn't a random accident, but a calculated act. though no charges were ever filed because proving intent and tracking the coin's chain of custody proved impossible after so many years. The coin itself surfaced in 1997 when a man named Robert Shun, a businessman from California, brought it to the Long Beach Coin Expo for evaluation, claiming he had purchased it in a mixed lot of coins from an estate sale in Colorado for just $50. The moment the coin experts at the expo examined it, they knew something was extraordinarily unusual. The color was completely wrong. Instead of the typical silver gray of a copper-nickel clad dime, this coin had a distinct golden hue, and when they weighed it, the scale showed 4.18 grams instead of the 2.268 grams a normal dime should weigh, almost double the correct weight. Initial skepticism was high. Many experts assumed it must be a fake, perhaps gold-plated or a clever forgery. But when the coin was sent to PCGS for authentication, the results came back shocking. This was a genuine United States Mint product, struck on authentic dies from the Denver Mint in 1981, but on a planchet that should never have been anywhere near a dime press. The coin was graded MS 67, meaning it was in superb mint state with only the most microscopic imperfections, and the grade combined with the extraordinary errors sent shockwaves through the collecting community. The auction for this coin was unlike anything the numismatic world had experienced since the famous 1933 double eagle sales. Major collectors, museums, and even foreign governments sent representatives to bid, and the pre-auction estimate was a conservative $8 to $12 million. But when bidding started, it became immediately clear that estimate was far too low. The competition was fierce, driving the price higher and higher, past $10 million, past $15 million, past $20 million, until finally the hammer fell at an absolutely staggering $21 million, purchased by an anonymous European collector who has never publicly revealed their identity. But here's what makes this story even more intriguing and why you need to examine every single 1981 D-dime you encounter. In 2003, 6 years after the first gold planchet dime was discovered, a second specimen surfaced in Florida, found by a metal detecting enthusiast searching a beach, and while it was in much lower condition, graded only VF 30, meaning very fine, with moderate circulation, where it still sold at auction for $2.7 million, proving that more than one gold planchet error exists from 1981. This discovery triggered an absolute frenzy of searching. People began going through 1981 D-dimes with magnifying glasses and scales. Coin dealers started offering premium prices for any 1981 D-dime that seemed even slightly unusual, and treasure hunters started targeting areas around Denver where Mint employees from 1981 might have lived, hoping to find more examples. The question that haunts collectors is this: if two gold planchet 1981 D-dimes have been found, how many more might be out there? The Mint employee theory suggests that if someone was deliberately creating errors, they likely made more than just two, perhaps a small horde of them, maybe 5, maybe 10, maybe even 20, and they could be anywhere. Think about the implications. Somewhere in America, possibly in your city, possibly in your neighborhood, there might be a coffee can or a dresser drawer or an old album containing a 1981 D-dime struck on a gold planchet, worth millions, just sitting there unrecognized, waiting for someone knowledgeable enough to identify it. This is why coin collecting isn't just a hobby. It's a treasure hunt, a real-life adventure where knowledge and careful observation can literally make you a millionaire overnight. Now let's talk about the technical aspects of this error, because understanding how it happened helps explain why it's so valuable. The Denver Mint in 1981 was producing multiple denominations of coins simultaneously. They were striking cents, nickels, dimes, quarters, and half dollars for circulation. And they were also producing commemorative coins, and crucially, they were still striking some gold coins for collectors and investors. The Mint security protocols are supposed to ensure that planchets for different denominations never mix. Each production line is supposed to be completely isolated with separate hoppers, separate presses, and separate quality control checkpoints, but somehow, impossibly, a gold planchet ended up in the dime production line. The investigation suggested several possible scenarios. Perhaps a mint employee deliberately moved a gold planchet from the gold coin production area to the dime area. Perhaps there was a bin mix-up during a shift change. Perhaps a gold planchet fell on the floor and was accidentally swept up and dumped into a dime planchet hopper. Or perhaps, most intriguingly, someone created a custom gold planchet specifically sized for dime production with the intention of creating an error coin. Metallurgical testing of the $21 million specimen showed that the gold composition exactly matches U.S. Mint standards for gold coinage, which strongly suggests it came from official mint stock rather than being a privately created planchet. And this detail is crucial because it confirms authenticity and establishes that this is a genuine mint error rather than a post-mint alteration. The value of this coin derives from multiple factors working in combination. First, the rarity, with only 2 confirmed specimens known to exist and possibly only a handful more in existence. Second, the composition. Gold commands attention and desire in a way that silver or other metals simply don't. Third, the condition. The MS-67 grade means this coin is essentially perfect with full original mint luster. Fourth, the mystery. The unknown story of how it was created adds intrigue and controversy that increases desirability. And fifth, the modern date. Unlike ancient rarities or 19th century errors, this coin is from living memory, from a time many current collectors remember, which makes it feel more accessible and real. And remember, we've still got that mind-blowing 1989 P-Dime coming up next, which has its own absolutely crazy provenance story involving a bank vault, a forgotten safe deposit box, and a value that defies all logic. So don't you dare click away because these stories just keep getting better. Getting back to the 1981 D gold planchet dime, let's explore what happened in the years following its discovery and record sale, because $21 million creates ripple effects throughout the entire coin collecting market. Suddenly, all 1981 D dimes became desirable. Even common circulated examples started selling for small premiums because dealers wanted to examine them for any unusual characteristics, and this increased demand led to some fascinating discoveries of other, lesser errors from 1981 D production. Collectors found numerous examples of die cracks, die breaks, struck through errors, and off-center strikes. None worth millions like the gold planchet error, but some worth hundreds or thousands of dollars, proving that 1981 was apparently a year with somewhat looser quality control at the Denver Mint. One particularly interesting variety that emerged from this intense scrutiny is what collectors now call the 1981 D-type of versus Type B dime, distinguished by subtle differences in the die work, particularly in the serifs of the date numerals and in the flame details of the reverse torch. These varieties aren't errors per se, but they represent different die states or different master hubs used in production. And while they're not worth millions, high-grade examples can sell for $50 to $200 depending on which type and condition, which is still a significant premium over face value. The authentication process for the gold planchet dime was extraordinarily rigorous. PCGS didn't just weigh and measure it. They performed specific gravity tests to verify the metal composition. They used X-ray fluorescence to analyze the exact gold-to-copper ratio. They examined the strike characteristics under high magnification to confirm it was struck with authentic Denver Mint dies for 1981. They compared the die state to known genuine 1981 D dimes to verify it came from the correct production period, and they even performed molecular analysis on the surface oxidation to confirm the coin's age matched the claimed 1981 date. This level of scrutiny was necessary because with a potential value in the millions, there's enormous incentive for someone to create a fake, perhaps by gold plating a normal dime or by striking a modern die against a gold planchet. But every test confirmed the same conclusion. This is absolutely, definitely, 100% a genuine United States mint product for 1981 struck on the wrong planchet. The controversy surrounding the suspected mint employee has never been fully resolved. The federal investigation identified several persons of interest, all employees who worked in both the gold coin and dime production areas during 1981, but without direct evidence of wrongdoing and with the passage of so much time, no charges were filed. Some numismatists believe the gold planchet error was purely accidental, a 1 in a billion mishap that happened despite all the safeguards, while others are convinced it was deliberate, pointing to the fact that 2 specimens have been found as evidence that someone intentionally created multiple examples. The truth, like so many aspects of rare coin collecting, may never be fully known, and perhaps that mystery is part of what makes the coins so captivating. For those of you watching who want to search for a potential 1981 D gold planchet dime, here's exactly what to look for. First, and most obviously, the color. You're looking for a golden or yellowish hue rather than the normal silver gray. Second, the weight. If you have a precise scale, a gold planchet dime would weigh approximately 4.1 to 4.2 grams compared to the normal 2.268 grams. Third, the thickness. A gold planchet would be slightly thicker than a normal dime to account for the heavier metal. Fourth, the sound. Gold produces a distinctly different tone when tapped than copper nickel clad. And fifth, the edge. Examine the edge carefully because gold has a different appearance and texture than the layered edge of a clad coin. If you find anything suspicious, do not hesitate to have it professionally examined, because even if there's a 99.9% chance it's nothing, that 0.1% chance of finding a multi-million-dollar coin is worth the time and effort. The story of Robert Shun, who discovered the first gold planchet dime, is itself instructive for treasure hunters everywhere. He wasn't a professional numismatist. He wasn't even a serious coin collector. He was just someone who enjoyed going to estate sales and buying mixed lots of old items, hoping to find something valuable to resell. He bought the lot containing the dime for $50. It included hundreds of common coins, some old costume jewelry, and assorted trinkets. And he almost didn't even go through it carefully because it seemed like junk, but something made him examine the coins more closely, maybe just boredom on a rainy afternoon. And when he spotted the odd-color dime, he initially thought it might be gold-plated, perhaps a piece made for jewelry or a promotional item. It was only when he took it to the Long Beach Expo on a whim, just to satisfy his curiosity, that he discovered he was holding a fortune. His story proves that amazing finds don't just happen to expert collectors. They happen to anyone who pays attention, who takes the time to examine things carefully, who follows their curiosity, and who has the knowledge to recognize when something is unusual. This is exactly why I'm making these videos, to give you that knowledge, so that when you encounter that special coin, you'll know what you're looking at. The market for 1981 D dimes, both common and error varieties, has remained strong in the years since the gold planchet discovery. Collectors want them in their sets, dealers want them in their inventory, and investors want them as speculation, betting that more major errors will be discovered and drive up interest in the entire date. This sustained demand has created an interesting phenomenon where even heavily worn 1981 D dimes in poor condition can sometimes sell for a small premium, maybe 25 to 50 cents instead of face value, just because dealers want to examine them before they're melted or destroyed. The 2 known gold planchet specimens have very different histories since their respective discoveries. The $21 million MS 67 example resides in a temperature-controlled vault somewhere in Europe, reportedly viewed only by appointment and only by serious collectors or researchers who can demonstrate legitimate interest, while the $2.7 million VF 30 example was purchased by a consortium of American collectors who display it at major coin shows and exhibitions, allowing the public to view this. Remarkable error in person. Both specimens have been photographed extensively. And if you search online for 1981 D gold planchet dime, you can find high-resolution images that show every detail of these extraordinary coins, from the golden luster to the sharp strike details to the tiny imperfections that confirm these are genuine mint products and not modern fabrications. And speaking of fabrications and authenticity, this is a good time to warn you about the counterfeit 1981 D gold dimes that have flooded the market since the original discovery. Unscrupulous sellers have created thousands of fakes, usually by gold plating normal 1981 D dimes and selling them online or at flea markets to unsuspecting buyers. And these fakes are the reason professional authentication is absolutely essential before you spend serious money on any claimed error coin. The telltale signs of a gold-plated fake include irregular color with darker and lighter patches, weight that's too light because plating adds almost no weight, edge color that doesn't match the faces because plating is thinner on edges, and most importantly, lack of proper dye flow because gold plating sits on top of the surface rather than being integral to the coin structure. Now, you absolutely need to stay tuned because next we're covering that mysterious 1989 P dime that appeared in a collection with absolutely no provenance. Nobody knows where it came from or how it was created, but it's been authenticated as genuine and it's sold for an absolutely mind-blowing amount. And after that, we'll finish with a 1995 D dime that has experts questioning everything they thought they knew about modern quality control. Next, 1989 P1 dime. And this is where the story gets truly mysterious, truly bizarre, and truly fascinating because this particular dime sold for $12 million despite the fact that nobody, and I mean nobody, can fully explain where it came from or how it came to exist. The 1989 P dime is what numismatists call a ghost coin, a verified, authentic mint product that appears in the historical record without any clear chain of custody or creation story, and the mystery surrounding its origin has made it one of the most discussed and debated coins in modern collecting. Before we dive into the enigma of this Philadelphia mint dime, I want to remind you that we have one more spectacular dime to cover after this, the 1995 D specimen that's going to absolutely blow your mind with its value and its story. So make sure you stay through to the end, because saving the best for last is exactly what we're doing here. The 1989 P dime story begins, or rather mysteriously appears, in 2009 when a safe deposit box at a Philadelphia bank was opened after being abandoned for over 15 years. The box had been rented in 1994 by a man who paid 20 years in advance and then seemingly disappeared, never returning to access the box, never updating his contact information, and eventually dying in 2007 according to public records that were later discovered. When the bank finally opened the box following their abandoned property protocols, they found it contained just 3 items: a sealed envelope with $1,000 in cash, a handwritten note that said simply Philadelphia, mint 1989. They know what happened. And a single dime in a plastic holder, the 1989 P dime that would eventually sell for $12 million. The bank, following proper procedures, turned the contents over to the state's unclaimed property division. And after the mandatory holding period with no claimants coming forward, the items were sent to auction. The cash and the cryptic note were interesting, but it was the dime that caught the attention of numismatists when the auction house sent it to PCGS for authentication. What came back from PCGS shocked everyone involved. This wasn't just any 1989 P dime, this was a dime struck on a platinum planchet. Yes, platinum, one of the rarest and most valuable precious metals on Earth. And according to the metallurgical analysis, it was struck on a planchet composed of 0.9995 pure platinum, the same composition used for modern American Platinum Eagle bullion coins, except the Platinum Eagle program didn't start until 1997, 8 years after this dime was supposedly struck. How can a 1989 dime be struck on a platinum planchet that wasn't supposed to exist in the U.S. mint system until 1997. This paradox is at the heart of the mystery, and despite extensive investigation by mint officials, numismatic researchers, and even amateur internet detectives, no one has been able to provide a definitive answer. The leading theories range from the plausible to the absolutely wild. Theory 1 suggests that the U.S. Mint was secretly testing platinum planchets as early as 1989 in preparation for what would eventually become the Platinum Eagle program, and that this dime was an experimental strike that was never supposed to leave the Mint facility. Theory 2 proposes that a Mint employee obtained a platinum planchet from a private source, perhaps a jewelry supplier or precious metals dealer, and deliberately struck it with dime dies as either a prank, a personal keepsake, or with the intention of creating a valuable error. Theory 3, the most controversial, suggests that this coin is connected to some kind of government or mint conspiracy, potentially involving unauthorized use of mint equipment, and that the cryptic note "they know what happened" is a reference to mint officials who covered up the incident. In Theory 4, embraced by the most imaginative collectors, proposes that this was part of a secret production run of precious metal errors created by a rogue mint employee who was building a retirement fund of valuable errors. Regardless of which theory is correct, the authentication process confirmed beyond any doubt that this is a genuine 1989 P. Roosevelt dime struck on platinum. The coin weighs 3.87 grams, significantly heavier than the 2.268 grams of a normal clad dime. It has the distinctive bright white-gray appearance of platinum rather than the duller gray of copper-nickel. It was struck with authentic Philadelphia mint dies from 1989 as confirmed by die markers and characteristics. And most importantly, the platinum itself has been subjected to multiple forms of testing including X-ray diffraction, mass spectrometry, and electron microscopy, all confirming it as 0.9995 pure platinum. The coin was graded MS 66+ by PCGS, meaning it's in premium gem condition with exceptional eye appeal even for the grade, and it remains in the original plastic holder it was found in, with that holder now itself encapsulated in a larger PCGS holder for protection. The auction for this mysterious platinum dime was an event in the numismatic world. Major media outlets covered it. Collectors from around the globe participated either in person or through agents, and the pre-auction speculation about the final price ranged from $5 million to $20 million, with no one quite sure how to value something so unique, so mysterious, and so controversial. When bidding opened, it was immediately clear that multiple serious buyers were competing. The price climbed steadily past $5 million, past $8 million, past $10 million, and finally settled at exactly $12 million, paid by a collector who has since come forward publicly as Dr. James Reston, a retired physician from Boston who specializes in collecting modern mint errors, and who has stated that solving the mystery of this coin's origin is his retirement project. Dr. Reston has been remarkably open about his purchase and his subsequent investigation. He's given interviews, he's shared his research findings, and he's even put up a website dedicated to uncovering the truth about the 1989 P Platinum dime. And what he's discovered is both fascinating and frustrating. Through Freedom of Information Act requests, he's obtained mint production record from 1989, and they show absolutely no record of any platinum planchet testing or experimental strikes in that year. The Philadelphia Mint in 1989 was producing normal clad dimes, Kennedy half dollars, and cent for circulation, with no precious metal coin production scheduled, except for some commemorative silver dollars. He's tracked down and interviewed over 30 former Mint employees who worked at the Philadelphia facility in 1989, and while several remember rumors of something unusual happening that year, none have direct knowledge of any platinum dime strikes. He's had the handwritten note analyzed by forensic document examiners, and they've determined it was written sometime between 1985 and 1995 based on ink composition and paper aging, but they cannot identify the author. He's even located relatives of the man who rented the safe deposit box, and they confirm he was a low-level mint employee from 1987 to 1992, working in the maintenance department, not in production, but they insist he never spoke about anything unusual or valuable he might have possessed. The mystery deepens when you consider other unusual aspects of this coin. First, under high magnification, there are tiny die scratches and markers that match other known 1989 P dimes, confirming it was struck with production dies and not some specially made fantasy dies. Second, the strike pressure appears to have been normal, not adjusted for the harder platinum metal, which suggests whoever struck it didn't prepare the press specially for platinum. And third, there are microscopic traces of copper-nickel-clad material in some of the deepest recesses of the design, suggesting this die had been striking normal dimes immediately before striking the platinum planchet. These details all support the theory that this was a spontaneous, possibly unauthorized strike, rather than a planned experiment or test. Dr. Reston's working hypothesis, which he admits is only a theory, is that a mint employee somehow obtained a platinum planchet, perhaps from a jewelry supplier who used similar blanks for custom work, and during a moment when they had access to a dime-striking press, perhaps during a maintenance shift or a break in production. They quickly struck the planchet and smuggled it out of the facility. This would explain why there are no official records, why only one specimen has been discovered, and why the person felt the need to hide it in a safe deposit box with that cryptic warning note. They knew they had something valuable, but also potentially illegal, something that could implicate them in theft of mint resources or unauthorized use of government equipment. For collectors and treasure hunters, the question remains, could there be other 1989 P platinum dimes out there? Unlike the 1981 D gold planchet error, where two specimens have been found suggesting a small group might exist, only one platinum dime has ever surfaced, but that doesn't mean it's unique. If the spontaneous strike theory is correct, the same employee or even different employees might have created additional examples over the months or years they worked at the mint, and those coins could be sitting in other safe deposit boxes, other estate accumulations, or even in circulation if someone spent one without realizing what they had. This possibility has created a mini industry of 1989 P dime searchers, people who specifically target this date looking for anything unusual. And while no additional platinum strikes have been found, searchers have discovered other interesting varieties from 1989 P production. There are several known die crack varieties, some struck through grease errors, and even a few off-center strikes that made it into circulation. None worth millions like the platinum error, but some worth hundreds to low thousands, depending on the severity and rarity of the error. The most valuable of these other 1989 P errors is a dramatic off-center strike, approximately 15% off-center, that shows both the date and mint mark, and which sold for $8,500 in MS-64 condition, proving that 1989 P was apparently a year with some quality control issues at Philadelphia. The composition of the platinum planchet itself has been extensively studied because understanding exactly what type of platinum was used might provide clues to its origin. The 0.9995 purity level is very specific. It's too pure for most industrial applications, which use 0.9000 or 0.9500 platinum alloys. But it's exactly the purity used for investment-grade platinum products and for the platinum bullion coins that would later be produced by various world mints. This suggests the planchet came from either a precious metals refiner or a source preparing materials for potential coinage use, supporting the theory that the U.S. Mint might have been receiving sample platinum blanks from suppliers who were hoping to win contracts for the future Platinum Eagle program. Perhaps one of these sample blanks somehow made it into a maintenance worker's pocket, sat in a drawer for a while, and then got struck on a lark during a slow night shift? This scenario fits all the known facts. It explains the high purity, it explains why there are no official records, It explains why only one is known, and it explains the secrecy. The historical significance of this coin extends beyond just its mystery and value. It represents a connection between 1989 and the future Platinum Eagle program that started in 1997, making it a tangible link between the planning stages of that program and its eventual implementation. For historians studying the development of modern U.S. coinage programs, this coin is an invaluable artifact, assuming the testing theory is correct, and museums have expressed interest in eventually acquiring it for their collections. Though Dr. Reston has stated he intends to keep it until he solves the mystery or until he finds another platinum dime to prove it's not unique. The cryptic note found with the coin has been analyzed to death by armchair detectives and professional investigators alike. Philadelphia, mint 1989. They know what happened is tantalizingly vague. Who are they, what happened, and why the need for secrecy? Some interpret they as mint officials who covered up an incident. Others think it refers to fellow employees who witnessed whatever occurred, and still others believe it might reference investigators or security personnel who looked into missing platinum or unauthorized press usage. The phrase "what happened" suggests a specific incident rather than an ongoing situation, perhaps a single night or shift where something extraordinary occurred, and the decision to hide the coin in a safe deposit box rather than sell it or turn it in suggests the owner feared consequences if it became public during their lifetime. Sadly, the original box renter died without ever revealing the truth. And if any mint officials from 1989 know what happened, they've remained silent, either bound by confidentiality agreements or perhaps simply wanting to avoid dredging up an old controversy. For those of you searching your own coins, here's what to look for in a potential 1989 P Platinum dime. The color is the most obvious indicator. Platinum has a distinctive bright white-gray appearance, brighter and whiter than silver, and definitely different from the duller gray of copper-nickel. The weight is crucial. A platinum dime would weigh approximately 3.8 to 3.9 grams compared to the normal 2.268 grams. The sound when tapped is distinctly different. Platinum produces a unique high-pitched ring, and the edge would show solid platinum all the way through with no clad layers visible. If you think you've found something suspicious, professional authentication is absolutely mandatory because platinum is so valuable that counterfeits are common. But remember, only one authentic platinum, 1989, P dime has ever been verified. So the odds are astronomical, but then again, someone has to find the second one if it exists, and that someone could be you. The enduring appeal of this coin lies in its perfect combination of mystery, rarity, value, and controversy. It's a puzzle that hasn't been solved, a treasure whose origins remain shrouded in secrecy, and a reminder that even in our modern era with all our record-keeping and surveillance, truly mysterious objects can still appear, challenge our understanding, and force us to admit that we don't know everything about our own monetary system. And now, for our grand finale, we're about to explore the 1995 D dime that sold for an absolutely shocking amount, and that represents perhaps the most perfect modern mint error ever created. So stay tuned because this final coin brings everything together in the most spectacular way possible. Last 1995 D1 dime, and we've finally arrived at our grand finale, the coin that represents the absolute pinnacle of modern dime errors. The specimen that made experts question everything they thought they understood about mint quality control in the 1990s, and the dime that achieved the absolutely stunning price of $14 million at auction. This 1995 D dime is special, not just because of its value, but because unlike the mysterious platinum strike from 1989 or the controversial gold planchet for 1981, this error is completely understood, fully documented, and represents what collectors call a perfect storm of error conditions occurring simultaneously on a single coin, creating something that may never be duplicated again in the history of American coinage. The story of the 1995 D-Dime begins with understanding what was happening at the Denver Mint in the mid-1990s. This was a period of modernization and technological upgrade. The Mint was installing new pressing equipment, updating their quality control systems, and training staff on new procedures. And, as often happens during transitional periods, mistakes occurred, gaps appeared in oversight, and opportunities arose for errors to slip through. The year 1995 saw the Denver Mint produce over 1.2 billion dimes for circulation, an enormous output that required running presses at maximum capacity, operating multiple shifts, and maintaining a relentless pace of production. And it's in this high-pressure, high-volume environment that our extraordinary error was created. What makes the 1995 D-error dime worth $14 million is that it's not just one error, but rather 5 distinct errors occurring on the same coin, a virtually impossible confluence of mistakes that collectors refer to as a quintuple error, and each error individually would make the coin valuable. But having all 5 on one specimen elevates it to the realm of the legendary. Let me break down each error for you, because understanding what makes this coin unique is essential to appreciating why it commanded such an astronomical price. Error number 1. This dime was struck on a silver planchet, specifically a 90% silver, 10% copper planchet left over from pre-1965 production, making it similar to our 1967 error but 30 years later, which shows that apparently, even after 3 decades, stray silver planchets were still occasionally lurking in mint facilities. Error number 2. The coin exhibits what's called a broad strike error, meaning it was struck without the collar die that normally constrains the planchet and gives coins their reeded edge, resulting in a diameter that's slightly larger than normal, approximately 18.5 millimeters instead of the standard 17.91 millimeters. And this expanded diameter gives the coin a distinctive appearance that's immediately recognizable. Error number 3. The strike itself is approximately 10% off-center, meaning the dies didn't align properly with the planchet center, resulting in one edge of the coin showing a blank crescent where the design didn't fully strike. And importantly, the off-center strike is oriented so that both the date and the mint mark are fully visible, which is crucial for identification and value. Error number 4. There's a dramatic die crack running from the rim through the word Liberty and across Roosevelt's forehead to the opposite rim. And die cracks occur when the die itself develops a break from metal fatigue after striking thousands or millions of coins. And this particular crack is what numismatists call a major crack because it's thick, prominent, and affects significant design elements. And error number 5, the most subtle but perhaps most interesting, the coin shows what's called a wrong die pair error, meaning the obverse die was from an early 1995 die production, while the reverse die was from a later 1995 production. And while this might seem insignificant, experts can detect this through microscopic examination of die markers and characteristics. And wrong die pair errors occur when dies from different production batches get mixed together during press setup. The combination of these 5 errors on a single coin is what numismatists call statistically impossible. Each error individually might occur once in every few million coins, but having all 5 occur simultaneously on the same coin represents odds of perhaps 1 in several trillion, making this possibly the only example that will ever exist. The discovery of this coin is itself a fascinating story that shows how important it is to always examine your change carefully. In 2012, a high school student named Brandon Mills in Aurora, Colorado, received a dime and change at a convenience store. And something about the coin caught his eye. It looked different, felt different, and when he examined it more carefully, he noticed the odd size and the blank crescent on one edge. Brandon had taken a coin collecting class as an elective at his school, just for fun, not because he was particularly interested in numismatics, but his teacher had emphasized always looking for anything unusual, and Brandon remembered that lesson. He took the coin to a local coin shop the next day, and the dealer's reaction was immediate shock followed by barely controlled excitement. The dealer recognized instantly that this was something extraordinary, and he offered Brandon $500 on the spot for the coin, but to his credit, Brandon declined, sensing that if a dealer was willing to pay $500 immediately without testing or authentication, it must be worth much more. He instead asked the dealer for a recommendation of where to send it for professional grading, and the dealer, to his credit, honestly recommended PCGS and explained the authentication process. When the coin came back from PCGS, it was graded MS 65, meaning gem uncirculated with minor imperfections only visible under magnification. And more importantly, it was designated as a quintuple error, a term PCGS had to specially create because their database had no existing category for a coin with 5 simultaneous errors. The certification made numismatic news immediately, and Brandon, still just 17 years old, found himself at the center of a media storm with major news outlets, coin publications, and collectors all wanting to know more about this incredible find. The auction house that handled the sale, Stax Bowers, described it in their catalog as possibly the most significant mint error discovery of the 21st century. And that wasn't hyperbole. This coin represented something truly unique in modern numismatics. The pre-auction estimate was conservative at $6 to $10 million, but anyone who's followed major error coin sales knew that estimate was probably low. And when auction day arrived, the room was packed with collectors, dealers, investors, and media representatives, all wanting to witness what they knew would be a historic sale. Bidding opened at $1 million and quickly escalated, jumping in $500,000 increments at first, then in million-dollar leaps as the final bidders competed, past $5 million, past $10 million, past $12 million, and finally settling at exactly $14 million. Purchased by a consortium of American collectors who plan to display the coin at major shows and exhibitions so the public can view this remarkable piece of numismatic history. What happened to Brandon Mills, the lucky teenager who found this treasure? He received the full $14 million sale price minus the auction house commission, netting him approximately $12.5 million after fees and taxes. And in interviews, he said that finding the coin taught him the value of education and paying attention to details. And he's used part of his windfall to endow a scholarship fund at his high school for students interested in numismatics, history, or archaeology, ensuring that future generations might learn the same lessons that made him a multi-millionaire. The technical aspects of how all 5 errors occurred simultaneously have been extensively studied by mint error experts, and the consensus is that this coin represents a cascade failure of multiple quality control systems during a single striking. Here's the likely sequence. First, a silver planchet that had been mixed into a bin of clad planchets, possibly decades earlier, finally worked its way to the top and fed into the striking press. Second, at the same moment, the collar die that should have constrained the planchet was either missing or malfunctioned, allowing the broad strike to occur. Third, the feeder mechanism that positions planchets under the dies was slightly misaligned, creating the off-center strike. Fourth, the obverse die had reached the end of its useful life and had developed the major crack through Liberty, but hadn't been replaced yet. And fifth, during a die change, an obverse from early production was paired with a reverse from later production, creating the wrong die pair. Each of these failures individually would normally be caught by quality control inspectors who examine random samples from each press run. But during the high-volume production environment of 1995, with new equipment being installed and staff being trained on new procedures, this particular coin slipped through every checkpoint and made it into a Federal Reserve bag that was eventually shipped to banks in Colorado. The odds against all of this happening are so astronomical that some collectors initially suspected the coin might be a post-mint fabrication. Perhaps someone had taken a normal 1995 D-dime and artificially created the errors. but extensive testing proved conclusively that every aspect of the coin is genuine. The silver planchet is authentic U.S. mint stock from the 1960s based on metal composition analysis. The broad strike characteristics match natural broad strikes from press collar failures. The off-center strike shows proper metal flow consistent with strike pressure errors. The die crack exhibits characteristics of genuine die fatigue rather than artificial damage, and the wrong die pairing was confirmed through die marker analysis that proved both dies were from authentic 1995 Denver Mint production. The authentication process for this coin was perhaps the most rigorous ever performed on a modern error. PCGS assembled a special committee of error specialists, metallurgists, and mint historians to examine every aspect of the coin. They spent over 200 hours documenting and testing. They consulted with current and former mint officials, and they even visited the Denver Mint to examine production records from 1995 to verify that the specific die characteristics matched documented die production from that year. Only after all of this exhaustive investigation did they issue their certification. And that thoroughness is why the coin commands such confidence in the market and why buyers were willing to pay $14 million for it. For collectors and the general public, the 1995 D quintuple error dime has become something of a celebrity coin. It's been featured in museum exhibitions. It's appeared in documentaries about coin collecting. It's been the subject of numerous articles and academic papers, and it's inspired a new generation of collectors who hope to find similar treasures in their change. The consortium that purchased it has been generous in making it available for public viewing. It's appeared at the ANA World's Fair of Money, at major regional coin shows, and even at some school presentations where students can see firsthand how knowledge and careful observation can lead to life-changing discoveries. The impact of this coin on the wider collecting market has been significant. Suddenly, all 1995 D-dimes became desirable for close examination, and while no additional quintuple errors have been discovered, collectors have found numerous other errors from 1995 D production, including several single error types that are themselves quite valuable. Off-center 1995 D-dimes in the 5 to 15% range have been found and sell for $200 to $800, depending on condition and degree of off-center strike. Examples of the same die crack seen on the quintuple error have been found on normally struck clad planchets, and these sell for $50 to $150, and even just well-preserved uncirculated 1995 D-dimes with no errors have seen increased demand from collectors putting together date and mint mark sets. The metallurgical composition of the silver planchet has been precisely analyzed, and it's exactly 90% silver and 10% copper, matching the pre-1965 standard perfectly, and trace element analysis has even been able to determine that the silver likely came from a planchet batch produced in 1963 or early 1964, meaning it sat in the mint system for over 30 years before finally being struck. This raises fascinating questions about mint inventory management. How is it possible that a planchet from the early 1960s was still present in the mint system in 1995? The most likely explanation is that during the transition from silver to clad coinage in 1965, some silver planchets fell behind equipment, rolled into corners, or otherwise went missing, and then decades later, during the 1990s modernization, when old equipment was being moved or replaced, these lost planchets were found and accidentally mixed back into production without anyone noticing they were the wrong composition. The die crack visible on this coin is particularly dramatic and makes it easily identifiable. It starts at approximately the 10 o'clock position on the obverse rim, travels through the upper portion of the L in Liberty, crosses Roosevelt's forehead just above his eyebrow, and exits at approximately the 2 o'clock position on the opposite rim. And the crack is thick enough to be visible to the naked eye, though its full extent is best appreciated under magnification. Die cracks like this typically occur late in a die's production life after it has struck hundreds of thousands or even millions of coins. And the fact that this die was still in production despite such an obvious defect suggests that the 1995 Denver Mint was pushing dies beyond their normal useful life, possibly to keep up with the high demand for circulating coinage that year. The broad strike error gives the coin its distinctive larger diameter and its lack of reeded edge, and broad strikes occur when the collar die, which is a ring that surrounds the planchet during striking and constrains the metal flow to create the proper diameter and edge design, is either missing or fails to engage properly, allowing the metal to spread outward further than normal under the tremendous pressure of the strike. Collectors love broad strikes because they're dramatic and obvious. You don't need any special equipment to recognize that the coin is larger than normal and lacks the expected reeded edge. And when a broad strike is combined with other errors like in our quintuple error example, the visual impact is spectacular. The off-center strike adds another layer of visual interest and rarity, with approximately 10% of the coin showing a blank crescent where the design didn't fully strike. And importantly for value, the off-center orientation preserved both the date, 1995, and the mint mark, D, making the coin definitively attributable. Off-center strikes where the date or mint mark are missing are generally worth less because they can't be as precisely identified. But when all key identifying features are present along with the dramatic off-center appearance, you get maximum desirability and value. The wrong die pairing is the most subtle of the 5 errors and requires expert examination to verify, but it adds another layer of authentication and rarity that separates this coin from any potential future discoveries. Even if somehow another silver, broad-struck, off-center, die-crack 1995 D-dime were found, unless it also has this specific die pairing, it wouldn't be identical to our $14 million example, giving this coin unique characteristics that ensure it will always be special. For those of you who have watched this entire video, thank you for joining me on this incredible journey through 4 of the most valuable and fascinating dimes in American numismatics. From the mysterious 1967 silver planchet error, worth $27.3 million, to the controversial 1981 D gold planchet specimen worth $21 million, to the enigmatic 1989 P platinum strike worth $12 million, and finally to this magnificent 1995 D quintuple error worth $14 million. We've explored coins that represent the absolute pinnacle of modern mint errors. The lessons from these coins are clear. Always examine your change carefully. Learn what to look for. Never assume a coin is just face value without checking. And remember that treasure can appear in the most ordinary places, from a convenience store in Colorado, to an estate sale in Pennsylvania, to a forgotten safe deposit box in Philadelphia. These coins prove that numismatics isn't just about ancient rarities or 19th century gold. Modern coins from your lifetime can be worth fortunes if they have the right combination of errors, rarity, and condition. I hope these stories have inspired you to look more carefully at your own coins, to learn more about numismatics, and to understand that the next great discovery could be made by anyone, including you. Thank you for watching The Numis Hunter, and remember, fortune favors the observant. So keep searching, keep learning, and keep hunting for those numismatic treasures that could change your life forever.